Hey, what's up? INMA. My name is Yusuf Omar, and I am mobile editor of the Hindustan Times here in Delhi, India. What does mobile editor mean? It means that I am basically trying to get 750 journalists in this newsroom, which is one of the biggest newsrooms in the world, to shoot, to edit, and to produce stories using their mobile phones. Right here, right there. Right now, I'm going to go onto the INMA website on Facebook, and I'm going to take my live, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to share it. And I'll encourage you guys to do the same. So I'm going to share it on my personal page. And if you guys think anybody who's interested in innovative journalism, in storytelling, in new forms of storytelling, share it now, because I want to start this discussion. I want to have it with people live. That's the whole point of it, right? I think one of the biggest findings that we're having here is that we're taking everything live. Today we've done maybe 5 or 6. Can you guys hear me? I'm sure you can. And I'm going to post that so you guys can see it's live. And let me just check if I can hear myself clearly as I take you through my newsroom. Come and have a look. This is a bit meta, as I watched me a few moments ago. So, this is the Hindustan Times. It's a newspaper that's over 100 years old, archaic in many respects, and yet super, super digitally savvy, tech savvy. Because we're seeing such phenomenal growth still in India in the print space, we're still seeing more and more people buying the newspaper, buying print copies. What it means is that we can do crazy, crazy, crazy things in the digital space. We can still, this is the Mint, which is one of our sister papers, and this is the Mint newsroom, which is basically like a Financial Times, a very economics and based paper. And on this side, you have the Hindustan Times newsroom. And here's a copy of our city part of the paper. I'll find a copy of our front page. Who's got the Hindustan Times? There's a copy of the Hindustan Times. Full front advert by Google Pixel. But if we just open up, still very much a broadsheet, traditional broadcaster in many, many, many respects. Traditional newspaper, rather. Still feel the paper. And in India, you're seeing a growth in print. And that's largely being fueled by more people learning to read, more people becoming more affluent. If I look at the front page today, you've got stories about demonetization. That's been a big one overnight. The rupee, the most popular 2 notes, were made illegal. They were demonetized, much like losing a $10 note in the US, and you can imagine the chaos that ensued. Cricket's on the front page. If I've learned one thing during my 9 months now in India, living in India and working in the Hindustan Times, if you do cricket, right-wing politics, and Bollywood, you get lots and lots of audiences. But of course, we try to do things with a lot more editorial value as well. This is our online team. Of course, they're still working. It's 9 o'clock at night here in Delhi. Guys, I see you guys are working excitedly. We're doing a Facebook Live. Looks like they are. I don't know what was on the screen before, but it no longer is. Guys, how's the night going? What's happening on Hindustan Times' online channels?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing to see here. What's doing well tonight? What's been the big topics that people are talking about online?
Attack. Third story.
Yeah, so apparently the Berlin police, which claimed the truck attack, the main suspect in the truck attack, that they had claimed that they had detained apparently. But today they have come up with the thing that he's not the right guy.
Wowee. Dum. That's the drama that's ensuing. And Hindustan Times is largely based by data and analytics. We have screens all over the place showing us what's trending, what's doing well on the website. That's helping to influence our decisions of what stories we do next. But let me take you further into the news. Our newsroom. I'm just sharing this on the Hindustan Times page. You guys are welcome to like us on Facebook. And I've just shared it. Oh, wowee. Access to face filters. Have you guys seen Facebook's new face filters? Really quite interesting. The ability to be on somebody's face and to put emojis and face filters. It seems like Facebook are taking a lot of inspiration from Snapchat. Now, the big question is, what would you do with this kind of technology for journalism? This looks very frivolous and childish. I mean, I look like a Santa Claus on a motorbike right now. well, what if you could use it for anonymous journalism? We were recently covering rape survivors telling their stories in a town of Mysore outside of Bangalore here in India. And we actually used Snapchat face filters like this to hide the faces of the young women. They chose their own filters so that they could tell their stories. I think one of my key messages to the guys out here is to look at social media platforms, but look beyond the gimmicks for how you can use these for real journalistic opportunities, for storytelling applications. And remember, of course, guys, share this video. I want to talk to your communities like I'm doing right now. I'm just going on to the, and I'm going to write a little post, Hindustan Times visit. If you guys are just joining us, we're at the Hindustan Times in India. Of course, Hindustan Times is a member of the INMA. They have been so for a while, a group that has given them a lot of opportunities to collaborate. I'm just walking through the newsroom. I'm going to be a little bit quiet now because I can see the guys are approaching deadline. They're just laying out the pages. How are you doing, man? We're on a Facebook Live. We're just seeing you laying out the pages. What are you on? You're on the sports page at the moment.
Yes, that's right. We're doing the Edge edition of sports page at the moment.
What does that mean?
That means it goes to the youth of Delhi. So there, the character of the page is a little different, slightly different from the one for Metro. So that is the sports connect with youth is given more preference there, as if like international football, tennis. So these are the main things that go there.
And as we know in India, sports, especially cricket, is like religion. When these screens are playing the cricket, we don't get any work done in this newsroom. So I see the title of this. It's not clickbaity. I really do believe that traditional media are perhaps less relevant now than ever before. It's something I spoke about at length at News Exchange in Copenhagen recently with Nigel Farage and a group of BBC journalists. But here in India, traditional media is still very relevant. A newspaper is still what's paying the bills, but it's not always going to be that way. And we are plowing enormous amounts of resources into digital. One of the primary drives of that is training 750 journalists to tell stories using their mobile phones. The greatest challenge about that is if I'm asking your newsrooms or what phone you're watching this on right now, it's probably an iPhone or it's probably a Samsung Galaxy. If I ask this newsroom what phones they have, these guys have 75 different types of phones in one newsroom. If fragmentation is the big F word, these guys have got it. A bunch of these guys have done mobile journalism training this week. In fact, I'm going to leave Sanjay on the camera there. I'm going to come around and speak to my team over here. Hey, guys. I know you guys are on deadline. We're doing a Facebook Live. How do you balance doing traditional journalism, writing your print stories, and still managing to do mojo, mobile journalism, to shoot videos in the field? How does that balance work for you?
Oh, well, it took some time initially, but you know, when you're at the spot, most of the times, earlier what we used to do was we used to take notes on our notepad, but now the phone does it for us. So we directly take interviews on phone, so that works as quotes direct.
It's very much a cultural shift, isn't it? Because, I mean, you've got to almost change your mindset that I'm no longer just a print journalist. Now I've got all these other expectations. Is it too much? Is it suddenly like, oh, now I've got 10 things to do where before I just had to write my story?
Yeah, initially, you know, it appears to be like we have a lot on our plate, but then gradually, once you get a hang of, you know, stitching your videos and editing them, that was where I personally used to feel face a lot of issues. But now, oh yeah, you sort of sorted that. Yeah. But then it's fun, you know, a lot of fun. Yeah, you get different perspectives, and then, you know, you see the stories in a different way, because in print there are times when stories become too dragged, but then video brings a fun element to stories.
Thank you so much. Our Hindustan Times Metro team have found mobile journalism to be fun. They found it to be useful, but it's also seen very real results. We found that footage that's taken on a mobile phone has done 3 times better than footage taken on a traditional broadcast camera here at the Hindustan Times. And why is that? You start to think the only logical reason can be when you're producing content on a mobile, you're thinking about how a mobile audience wants to digest it. You're thinking about the length, you're thinking about the subtitles, are they the right size? All of your influence is determined by the mobile phone. And that seems to be a culture. We're not trying to build a mobile journalism team here. My team is not large at all. I'm trying to build a mobile journalism newsroom. I want everybody from the security guards to the guys that are serving tea to the journalists to the editors, all to have an understanding about mobile journalism. about how to shoot, edit, and tell stories using their phones, but that's only half the conversation. The other half is how to share it. We find too many traditional newsrooms are focused on the who, the where, the what, the when, the why, the how, basic tenets of journalism, and they're not thinking about the second half of that conversation, the engagement. We produce a video, we produce a piece of content. Where does it go? It goes onto Facebook. Who's sharing it? Which influencers? Which Facebook groups? How are we going to make it relevant in 6 months' time? How are we going to make it relevant in a year's time? What commentary is in that comment section below our video? These are all questions that modern day journalists need to be asking themselves. And we're putting the emphasis on journalists and training them to be able to answer these questions. Having said that, not everybody is as excited as I am about mobile journalism and selfie journalism. I was recently in Copenhagen at News Exchange, and I gave a presentation about the media being out of touch, about the amazing way that we managed to miss Brexit, we missed Donald Trump, and quite simply, my feeling is it was because the media were looking in the wrong places. If you'd looked on Google Trend reports on the week of the US elections, you would have seen that infinitely more people searched vote Trump than anything else. It was all there, but people weren't looking at it. It was partially because they weren't listening, because they still regard social media as being an inferior storytelling platform. They still regard it as being a bunch of noise. And my message is quite simply that we need to look through that noise and find the relevant voices. That if journalism is made up of primary sources and the best journalism is the best source of primary sources, then selfie journalism is the most immediate relevant sources of our time, because it doesn't come with the pretense of objectivity or being neutral. It really has an opinion, and you watch it in light of that. My favorite example of that is just this week. If you know, there's a young woman by the name of Bana. Bana is a 7-year-old that has been doing periscopes and Twitter posts from inside Aleppo, a place where there are very, very few, if any, traditional media. It really has been the only avenue of communication and access to visuals. How do we know it's real? How do we know that Bana is actually telling the truth? Well, we can use technology to help verify selfie journalism, to help verify mobile journalism. Using Google satellites, we managed to verify that she was periscoping from exactly where she said she was. So I think going forward, if we're going to rely on more and more crowdsourced content, we are going to have to use technology to help verify what things are, is what people say they are. Snapchat is an app that we use a lot in this newsroom, and it also offered a very, very interesting look at the US elections. While most broadcasters were sitting on red and blue state maps saying, here's what happened and here's the swing states, who of you are watching Snapchat? They have half the US population, half the youth in the US use the app. There's about 150 million daily users, and they were aggregating their stories live in real time and giving us an inside look of young black women crying after Donald Trump won and triumphant supporters. And we suddenly got a whole different glimpse of the US elections personally delivered from individuals in their accounts. But yet many mainstream media don't regard this as news. They regard it as noise, as fluff. And they fail to see the immense potential of user-generated content. And ultimately, it's just leaving them out of touch. Millennials are increasingly finding traditional newsrooms to be too wealthy, too white, and too detached from real worlds and real stories. And they're missing the little stories on the ground. Mobile journalism is what I call hyper news, and is hyper local, and hyper local is what selfies do. It's basically talking to yourself. It's the most immediate stance. And we also find that mobile journalism has very real applications with sensitive stories, where you are interviewing people who don't want a big broadcast camera and a boom mic in your face. The ability to be very discreet and to be able to interview somebody in the most subtle way. For me, it allowed me to go to Syria and cover the war in 2014. I was able to get in and out and have images that people didn't have access to. In Congo in 2012, I strapped a camera to my head, a selfie camera, and I gave you point of view imagery. It's a whole new perspective, because nowadays young people have more angles than ever before, more perspectives, and they need a new form of journalism in order to tell it to them. This is my desk here in the Hindustan Times, my standing desk. The ultimate, but I mean, Bana in particular, the 7-year-old that I mentioned a few moments ago, who's been doing selfie journalism from Aleppo this week. Just last night, the news broke that she was evacuated to the outskirts of Aleppo. I can't help but wonder whether some of her work, some of her selfies, helped influence her eventual trajectory and being able to escape that horrendous place that she found herself in. But it's taken us to all sorts of places. I mean, we were recently covering education here in Delhi. And I mean, education is the same boring story every year. You go out and you say students are struggling to get into university and there's this many places. We thought about it and we said, how could we tell this story differently? So we brought 6 students in and we taught them. We sort of had storyboards and we taught them how to storyboard a story. And we had them Snapchat the most stressful 6 weeks of their lives trying to get into university. And they ended up producing their own show called Campus Calling, a reality show essentially, where we were aggregating. And it was the most organic, real content. They ended up telling us about their sex lives and about politics with family. And I think the real end message here is that the future of journalism is going to be the aggregation of sources, the aggregation of selfies. The idea of journalists going out on the ground, while critical, and the value to that is indispensable, is going to become less and less. I see a future where we are looking at thousands of cameras on a wall, images, and we're directing and putting together products. And the more perspectives, the more angles, the more cameras we have, I believe, is more truths. It's the same way that gave birth to the Arab Spring. It's the same movements that gave birth to the Black Lives Matter protests. People with mobiles telling their stories. And we've reached a stage where traditional media need to accept that they no longer have a monopoly on information. If people with mobile phones have a powerful story to tell, nothing can stop it going viral. The real challenge now is to separate the real from the fake and to work out what is true and what is not. And that's why the journalist is so indispensable. I'm saying that the traditional media landscape in its current form, with its labor-intensive news gathering processes that are expensive and slow, is futile. They're trying to win the breaking news game and they shouldn't. It's boring. They should focus on contextualizing. We actually need editors and journalists now more than ever before, with this great expanse of social media content, with this great amount of rubbish, garbage, to be honest. We need journalists to sift through it and to find the meaning and to find the deeper stories that are not bubbling up to the top of your social media stream. So I can acknowledge social media absolutely needs journalists and editors. And editors and journalists also need social media to get their ears to the ground, to understand what's actually happening beyond their little bubbles, beyond what we call their echo chambers. Because the whole argument goes that perhaps, and this was a saying my friend Riyad Minty tweeted a while ago, perhaps all of these people that we think are ranting on our trolls, who are on our YouTube and our Facebook channels, who are hating and posting these all this racist rhetoric, perhaps they're not trolls. Perhaps they're real people on the other side of an echo chamber. Perhaps these are the very people that are voting for Trump and for Brexit, and we're not hearing those voices. We're totally rendering them obsolete. So the real answer here is to start listening more. And the counter argument, I've had Nick Robinson, who's a BBC journalist at News Exchange, turned around after all this and he said, selfie journalism, that's not journalism, that's not news. News is finding out things. I can't think of a better way to find out things than to listen to people and to be able to aggregate the voices of millions of people and to separate truth from fake. And I think the other voice that we had come through was it was another woman from the BBC who said, well, how do we make sense of it all? There's 2 ways we do it. We do it with editors and we do it with technology. What I think is dangerous is the game we're playing at the moment, where we are blaming Facebook for all of this fake news. And we're now putting the onus on Facebook to say, hey, you guys should police it. We should get a Facebook editor and we should ban certain posts and we should take down alt-right posts. Guys, there's a name for that and it's called censorship. And it's very, very slippery slope. I would much rather have journalists, fact-checking organizations, media companies playing the curators, working out what's real and what's not, than putting all of that power in Facebook's hands. That's a dangerous game we play. I'm going to look at some of the questions. Maria says, traditional media doesn't have the monopoly, but how do we protect the public from junk bonds in the selfie wealth of information? That's a fantastic question, Maria. And I think it's the question of our time. We're now talking about post-truth. We're talking about fake news. These are such important questions. And I think it starts in acknowledging that truth has changed. That now we can have many truths on social media. Of course, there are some things that are absolutely black and white. Did somebody say something or didn't they? I think selfie journalism is only going to help in that respect. We're going to have more and more pieces of evidence to be able to validate what actually happened at a scenario. Whether that means a young black male being innocently shot down in the United States and having body cams and lots of selfie journalists to be able to verify what happened, or whether it means having selfie journalists everywhere, so that when Trump says, I didn't say that, I didn't make that racist statement, actually you did, and we've got cameras to prove you did. So I think selfie journalism can absolutely be used to help verify. And when we as the media spot news that isn't true, we need to be able to pin it down. And Facebook have done a good job of that this week. They've enabled a new feature where verified fact-checking organizations can flag things as suspicious. And now you get a big red flag come up to say, a third party has verified that this source is maybe not as authentic as you think it is. I don't think we should censor. I don't think we should ban. And I don't think we should take down these things. I think we should let them play on social media, but we should have clear warning signs. And the media need to do a better job of verifying where their sources come from. We need to take people into our workflow, into our production process. Here's how this piece was produced. Here's the sources we used, and let people be part of that process. At the end of the day, I am totally for the democratization of media, for people being able to self-regulate for themselves. Wikipedia is not a perfect model at all, and it's not the greatest, most valid source, but it is a self-governed community, by the community, for the community. Each single piece of text that gets put up on Wikipedia has to be checked by another human being, and I think there's some merit to that. I think we can learn a lot from that. We don't have to have this ultimatum that traditional media are the only arbiters of the truth. I think we have to move beyond the superiority complex and accept that we're in an entirely different social media landscape right now. How have you used selfie journalism at the Hindustan Times, asks Samaya. Well, primarily, we're training all these guys. We've got 750 journalists across 27 offices. It's an enormous organization. My primary job is to teach them how to shoot, to edit, to produce stories using their phones. And literally, we are not just doing that, but we're also enabling other people in other communities, civilians, to be part of our selfie journalism process, verifying that they are accurate, verifying that they are trustworthy sources, and bringing them into the process. Mobile journalism initially started, and selfie journalism, because it was the cheapest way for newsrooms to get into the news space, into the video space. It's now proving to be the most raw, the most organic. We're seeing that the average video that's produced on a mobile phone at the Hindustan Times gets over 70,000 views. And increasingly, we're taking it live, like we are right now, because people want live, they want real, they want raw, they want organic. Young people have never been more suspicious of mainstream media. They don't want highly curated, packaged content. They want to be able to ask questions. Uzair, who's an employee at the Hindustan Times, don't you think this era of breaking news is limiting facts, checking in most breaking news cases? Media wants to run too fast. Absolutely, Uzair. I think there's a race to be right, or to be first rather than be right. That's absolutely a valid concern. I think social media platforms need to work so that traditional media can correct themselves on social media on an ongoing basis. One of the benefits of Facebook, for example, is you put up a post and maybe you got something wrong and you can very quickly edit, correct. Twitter, on the other hand, you put up a tweet, if it's wrong, or you have to delete it. I think the ability to be able to constantly amend and to edit and to revise is very important in this instantly moving space. So we need to be cognizant of that. How do you channelize thousands of opinions? That's a very good question, Devendra. Essentially, Devendra, you can use technology on a basic level where if 20 people here are tweeting that Yusuf Omar is live right now on Facebook in this location, and maybe some of them have taken a picture of me, we can validate and curate him. 20 people have said it and they've spotted him, therefore he must be live. So using this basic technology, we can also put geo stamps, we can put location stamps. You can look at the metadata built into a video to see where it was taken and what device it was taken. This kind of verification is essentially going to become the value add that traditional media need to lock down if they're going to be relevant in this digital age. They need to make themselves relevant by being the curators. I thoroughly believe that curation is the new creation, that it is the latest form of news and storytelling. You're doing an excellent job, Zahid. Well done. That's very kind. Isn't selfie journalism short-lived? Take the case of India. Our judiciary still take hold of only newspaper articles for references or as a possible evidence, not even TV media. Selfie is far from it. That's more opinionated as they feel, as they report what I see at the first instance. While traditional institutions like the courts might be outdated. What's not outdated is the ability and power to shape a narrative and influence people's minds. And that power has shifted drastically. We've seen time and time again, be it the Arab Spring, the Black Lives Matter movements, or even here, demonetization here in India. When people have a voice and they want to get heard, they no longer have to go to traditional organizations. They no longer have to be on television or get their name in the paper. They can do it with a mobile phone right here. And there's something so liberating about that. So yes, the institutions might take a while to catch up, but ideologies don't. They've already happened. They're already spreading on these devices and not on the traditional sort of landscape that you would see. I'm going to drop a link to my keynote that I'd done at the News Exchange, so you guys can check it out after this. But really, it's a fine balancing act. And if we're going to conquer fake news, we need to address echo chambers. We need to address people being stuck in these little microcosms where they only speak and interact with people that have similar views. And if we're going to combat that, if we're going to expand the spectrum of people that we engage with, that has to start with selfie journalism. It has to start with listening to more voices and having more opinions in the room from more diverse backgrounds. Because I mean, this newsroom alone, like many newsrooms in the world, it's not representative of the whole of India. It's perhaps significantly wealthier than the majority of people. And I think we need to take that into account. We need to appreciate that it's not just talking heads that can shape the news, but a wide spectrum of people. And that's what selfie journalism allows for. It offers hyperlocal news, and it gets you into areas and people and communities that we didn't have access to before. I think one of my favorite examples was the Exodus documentary that was produced by the BBC, where they literally had refugees on dinghy boats telling their own story using mobile phones. For me, that was the most organic, real, and gripping sense of content I've seen in a very, very long time. I'm going to address a few more questions on this Facebook Live. And guys, feel free to please share this video with anybody who might be interested in it right now. I think if you really want to appreciate the ultimate utility of selfie journalism and Snapchat to some extent, you've got to look to the war zones. Look to Mosul and the battle for Mosul, which is Iraq's second biggest city. Normally, you would have a correspondent on the ground saying, "We're coming to you live from Mosul as this happens." Snapchat did something very interesting a few weeks ago. They were able to aggregate the cameras of doctors and teachers and fighters and students and foreign correspondents and hundreds of people on the ground in Mosul. And they produced live stories of these aggregations. And inevitably, they produced the most holistic form of storytelling I have ever seen from the front line. It wasn't one view, it was multiple sources. It was taking me there. It was raw, it was handheld, it was shaky, the audio was terrible, but people didn't care. The YouTube generation has never been more forgiving of these elements. All they want is a real story, and that hasn't changed. Be it traditional media, selfie journalism, mobile journalism, whatever you want to call it. The ability to tell a good story has not changed. I think we are entering what I call a robo-journalism landscape, where every story that can be automated will be automated. From, I think, 360, from the Olympics, where you saw a lot of the stuff in Rio being done by computers, where Usain Bolt would win a race and it would plug into a computer and the time and the date and all that, and it would automatically push out a story. We're going to see more of this. We're going to see more artificial intelligence in newsrooms. Your survival as a journalist and as an organization depends on becoming a RoboCop journalist, having a selfie in one hand and a 360 in another, and being able to do holistic storytelling and to bring people far, far more depth than just a singular writer or just a singular photographer. I really think we need to expand. We need to all see ourselves as mobile journalists and not simply one-off cases. Sumaya says, Exodus was one of the most moving journalist experiences you could have. Absolutely, Sumaya. You can post a comment in the comment section with the link to it for people that haven't seen it. But it really was one of the most gripping pieces of content I've ever seen. Maria, quoting me, absolutely. Are you seeing traditional media use selfie journalism? Should they be? I'm seeing some traditional media use it. I think the Hindustan Times is a fantastic example of an institution that is using it. I think there's fractions of it at the BBC, at CNN, with iReport for many years, all over the place. I think it's going to play a much bigger part in people's operations going forward. Really like your term mojo, it says INMA. Cool, people watching from India. Kathy, in the US, I've been really impressed lately with the way Dan Ruther, a quintessentially traditional broadcast journalist, has been using social media, especially Facebook, for journalism and holding officials accountable. I couldn't agree more. Facebook is sort of, how do they describe it? I was at an INMA conference in Monaco once, and they said Facebook, friend or enemy. That's a powerful statement. Facebook have an absolute monopoly at the moment on the amount of information that we give them and the audience reach that they have. And we're increasingly moving away from .coms or websites, and we're hosting everything on social media. And we're held ransom to their algorithms and their ability to change them overnight. But at the same time, absolutely, if you want to tap into a young audience, or any audience for that matter, to engage with them like I'm engaging with you, take questions in real time, there's no better place to be than Facebook. I suppose the conclusion is that you have to be platform agnostic. You have to be on Facebook, but also on Snapchat, also on Instagram, also on Twitter, also on YouTube, so that you're not held ransom by one particular organization or one particular platform. But what I will say is the platforms, Snapchat, Facebook, these guys are winning the curation game. It's not the publishers. It's not the traditional media houses that are able to aggregate the voices of millions of people using cell phones. It's them. So the only choice that traditional media have is to add depth, add wisdom, add analysis, help people make sense of the world, help them rationalize what they're seeing and all this noise that they're reading on the internet. That seems to me the only way that we're going to be able to survive in the selfie journalism landscape. Commonly, I keep hearing that selfie journalism has the ability to compromise quality, that anybody's voice, we can't verify it. And that's true. It can have drastic effects. Just this week, it hurts me that I even have to say this. It's so ridiculous, but I'm going to show it to you guys. I posted a picture of myself. It's on my page on Facebook, and I took Donald Trump's New York Times front cover, and I put my face on the magazine cover, on Time magazine. And imagine, you all know the Donald Trump Time magazine cover with him looking in a chair like that. It's all a bit creepy. And using Snapchat, I put my face up, and I said, "Hey, look who won Time Person of the Year, #fake news." And the amount of people that congratulated me was just ridiculous. And it just verified to me how easily people can be manipulated, and how gullible people are on social media, and how critical it is to give them accurate and fair and impartial comments. But the other side of selfie journalism is just embracing people, embracing opinions, embracing voices. They call it the law of large numbers, that the bigger our sample size, the more data we have, the more accurate our findings can be of any study. And selfie journalism is quite simply that. It's access to more sources, primary sources, than journalism has ever had access to before. I think there has never been a more exciting or confusing time to be a journalist. Exciting because we've got all of this new technology available to us. Terrifying because what do? You get to a situation that's happening right now as a selfie journalist or a mobile journalist. Do you take it live on Facebook? Do you do an Instagram post? Do you do a Snapchat? Do you do a Facebook? There's so many choices. And we can use data to help influence those decisions like we do at the Hindustan Times. But in the end, we need journalists. We need editors with the gut feeling, who know what makes a good story, who know where suspense lies, who know how to shape a narrative and how to contextualize and rationalize. And that's not going to go away. So the place of the journalist and the editor is not irrelevant. It's actually more relevant now than ever before. We just need to change the way we think of journalism. And that fundamentally means moving beyond a very narrow definition of journalism to a much broader sense of what it actually means to be a journalist in the 21st century. And that may not mean always having your boots on the ground doing the reporting. There's a lot of merit to that, but there's also a lot of value to having real people telling real stories, and us being able to verify and validate what's happening and what people say is happening all the time. We can keep this blame game going of fake news, of manipulation of social media, but I want to raise a couple points. Firstly, the idea that fake news is new is not new. There's been fake news forever. Just look at the tabloid newspapers. And the idea that social media allows us to manipulate the news, again, is not new. Traditional media have been manipulating the news for years and years. If they weren't, we wouldn't have gone to find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I think that social media has its flaws, but it also offers us more truth and more perspectives than ever before. How do you view post-truth through the lens of selfie journalism, Faruqi? It's a fantastic question. This whole notion of post-truth. I don't actually believe we are in an era of post-truth. I look at after the US elections, the New York Times readership, subscription skyrocketed, absolutely skyrocketed. That tells me that more people are looking for more truth than ever before, that they're looking for quality news and quality journalism. CNN have had the best year in history this year in terms of the amount of people that are watching their product. People are actually running back to traditional media, back to trusted sources to give them news that they can understand and trust. And I think the organizations like CNN, like New York Times, that are getting good or starting to understand the potential of listening to audiences, using user-generated content, are going to win. I think they're going to prevail in this new landscape of media. Let's see. Yes, more cameras, more truth, or it will curb wrong deeds. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Ekta. That's a very, very valid point you make. Any other questions, guys, about the Hindustan Times, about mobile journalism, about selfie journalism, which I believe is playing a critical role in places like Aleppo and war zones where we don't have enough perspectives, enough eyes to contextualize what's happening at the moment. I'm happy to feel them. I'm happy to have this debate with you. I'm happy to talk to you about traditional media becoming less relevant than ever before, both as a business model and as a source of news. There is a reason why people turned to social. There's a reason why they turned away from legacy brands. They stopped trusting them. These traditional media houses stopped representing large parts of society, and people found voices that resonated with their own on social media. And that's been a huge effect. Hi, Ashish Kumar. Hello. Welcome to the conversation. I'm glad you can join us. We've got over 110 people watching us live, and that number will grow subsequent to this Facebook Live. Guys, if there's no further questions, I really enjoyed having you here. You're most welcome to visit the Hindustan Times newsroom whenever you like. I'll be attending a number of events this year with a number of people from the INMA. I'll hopefully be in New York for the World Congress. And it's a fantastic opportunity to see innovations from around the world and see how other journalists are dealing with exactly the same challenges as us. I'm looking forward to talking to people from developing world too, because the challenges we share here are quite unique compared to other places in the world. Very low data our consumers are watching videos on. Very small files, 360 videos and virtual reality. We're struggling to make them smaller and to really compact them in so that people can digest them in places that don't have 2G internet and don't have 3G internet and don't have high data speeds. We're telling stories in GIFs and memes and whole new formats. And that's the excitement of working in the developing world. Challenges are real, but the opportunities are real too. India currently has 50% of the video audience 50% of the internet are watching videos. That makes up half the traffic of the internet. By 2020, Cisco estimate that India's internet will be 75% video. It's a lot of video and a lot of eyeballs, over 1.2 million people. It's essentially the biggest video market in the world if you exclude China, because China is a very censored space. So India is an exciting place to be, and I encourage you guys to come and visit me and to learn some of the techniques and workflows that we've used and some of the methods that we've used to help change the culture here and get lots of people on board with selfie journalism and mobile journalism. Nikhil, but in India, digital reach is negligible if we compare it to print or TV. Nikhil, you're right. Print still is a big dog here in India, and so is television. But I think there's a sense of complacency about how quickly that will change. I think that we look at the US and we say, oh no, we've got 5 more years till the fall of newspapers, and perhaps we do. And it's a fantastic opportunity to learn from the downfall of other traditional media, to not make the same mistakes and to be able to leapfrog technological innovations in a major way. But I think we'll be amazed at how quickly high-speed data will be rolled out and how quickly the absorption of cell phone and smartphones to enable sort of people to get online will be. I came from South Africa, where as a journalist for the last 5 years, a correspondent. There they had 133% cell phone penetration. There were more cell phones than people. There were more cell phones than fridges. There were more cell phones than televisions. And I see the same happening here in India. I think smartphone penetration at the moment is about 20%. That number is only going to grow. And it's going to be an exciting time to be here, indeed. I think there's going to be a lot of changes. Is traditional media now considered photogenic in some extent? Rahul, I don't know if I agree with that or not. Was in Iraq Central and was forced to go Mojo since there wasn't much space on the mobile. It was engaging in real time. Riza, that's really interesting that you were forced to go go mobile, and you didn't have much space and you went live. I think live video is the future of everything, man. I really think as we get towards 2020 and we have 5G cellular speeds, faster than you can possibly fathom, the fastest internet we've ever enjoyed. I think everybody's going to take everything live all the time, especially my generation. We're the generation that brought you the toilet selfie. We overshare our entire lives. And we do that because it's liberated us, because we've swiped right through Tinder and we've scrolled up through jobs. It's largely benefited our lives. So I think we're going to go live all the time. And I absolutely do believe that real-time live reporting is the future of news in all capacities, but not like television. It's not going to be a one-way conversation. It's going to be like this, me talking to you, you guys asking questions, and you guys determining the narrative, telling us which way to go, what to shoot, what stories to tell. It's going to be an incredible space. It already is an incredible time to be a journalist. I don't think there's ever been a more exciting time to be a journalist than right now. If there's no further questions, I'm going to sign out. Shruthin, how do you see the cost of journalism coming down? And what do you think of the media startups here? The cost of journalism is an interesting question. It has become infinitely cheaper than ever before. The fact that I can do a live crossing to the entire world with a phone that can cost as much as $4, now we have the Freedom 251, speaks to the drastic barrier of entries that have been diminished. In terms of the startup scene here in India, some interesting stuff. I mean, you see Quint and Scroll and even, Huffington Post have come into the scene, Vice are coming in. India is a really, really interesting space to be in, and it's saturated at the moment. There's a lot happening in that low-cost digital space, and nobody's actually shone out for me at the moment yet. Nobody's really proven themselves with any unique offering. It's going to be an interesting place to watch, though. And I think the legacy organizations like the Hindustan Times, in many respects, are leapfrogging into that digital space. I think we have such a massive footprint with journalists across 27 offices that we can quite literally have an enormous reach, enormous amount of coverage that puts us in a good position. Going back to the question of cost, I want to show you guys what kind of gear we use at the Hindustan Times, so you get an idea of how these kinds of things cost. I use a tripod that looks like this. It's called a little Manfrotto. No, it's not. It's a Gobi tripod, and it's as simple as that. My phone attaches to it, and I'll give you guys an idea of my setup. I'm just going to tuck this mic in there. So that plugs in. This is the kind of gear, but of course, and that plugs in like that. And I will use a microphone of sorts. We've got lots of different kinds of mics, but the one that I'm using right now by Samson is quite a decent mic. But sometimes we want to use a lapel mic when we're doing an interview. And I'll show you what that looks like. That's a lapel mic. So that will just fit into my Mojo kit for that. And to be honest, you need none of this, though. You really just need a decent phone. And that's the way I've operated as a journalist for many, many years. And now we're experimenting with things like this. Is the Insta360. It's a 360-degree camera. You can shoot in all directions. Plops into the bottom of my phone. And that's pretty much it. That's the kit that we use. We keep it minimalist. I call it jeans journalism. Everything has to fit in your pocket. Battery packs, another essential part of my kit. Wouldn't leave the house without it. But yeah, it's minimalist, it's simple, and it really, really does the job. This phone has more computing power than the rockets that took us to the moon. And if you just look at world news coverage, since 9/11, it hasn't been big broadcasters that have broken the world's biggest stories. It's been people with mobile phones, selfie journalists that have been shaping the narrative. So I think it's about time that traditional media stop ignoring it and start embracing it. Tom, I know Tom very well. I met him in Monaco. We're organizing the Media Viking Week in 2017. Sounds like you and your merger generation are the real media Vikings. Absolutely, Tom. We're on the forefront of the revolution. We're embracing it, and we're going to come across lots of opposition from a lot of media houses that are struggling to adopt, struggling to transform that figure selfie journalism is a threat in terms of embracing it. But we're looking forward to that battle. We will have that battle. As they continue to weaponize terms like fake news, we will address them, and we'll use technology to help, especially because the whole Bollywood scene is there. So yeah, Riza, there's a big scene out there. Nikhil, though we started using mobiles for lives on TV too, but only in emergency conditions. Nikhil, I hear you. I've seen a lot of coverage with mobile phones from the traditional broadcasters in India in times when there was outages in Chennai and we were covering the storms. I think if you've got access to OB vans and SNGs and BGANs and you can do those professional style broadcast journalism, absolutely do it. But the main lesson is that not so much the technology, but the formats. We can't assume that the stuff we put on television does well on social media, because it doesn't. We've seen time and time again that if you have all the tech, you still got to change the format and make it relevant to people in this digital space. But you already know this already. Muhammad Abbas. Digital news is growing so far, even in Africa. My only worry is clarity to information. Most of the digital media have need to be first in reporting, regardless of how accurate the news is. It's something we talked about earlier in this bulletin, Muhammad Abbas. Absolutely. The need to be first in turn instead of the need to be right. I think one of the major trends we're going to see in 2017 is that organizations are going to move away from trying to win the breaking news game, and they're going to focus on quality content. And that hopefully, adding the context, verifying, I think that's hopefully going to mitigate that enormous problem that we have. Cool, guys. It's been fun. Come visit us at the Hindustan Times. We'll teach you a thing or two about mobile journalism, selfie journalism, and the future of news. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. Add me on Facebook, add me on Twitter, on YouTube. My name's Yusuf Omar Essay, and this was shot by Sanjay Biswas, my colleague at the Hindustan Times. Smartest guy, really, really good guy to know. There isn't a problem that he hasn't been able to solve at the Hindustan Times newsroom. You need to surround yourself by smart people, not expensive gear. Take care. Bye-bye.